Hey folks, Matt Sharp here with another Pacific Angler Friday Fishing Report. We are filming for September 2nd, so if it's nowhere near September 2nd, click up here. This is a link to all the Friday Fishing Reports. We do it most weeks, so I should have something more up to date for you. September 2nd is a big day. Well, September 1st was a big day, and it is in the books, and we now can fish on almost all of our local waters for Chinook. We're going to go over that in detail because that's the big news. As you all know, it is way too little, way too late, but because things have been running on about a 10-day cycle late this season, that actually may play really well into the season when it comes to fishing off the mouth of the Fraser, fishing off the Bellboy. We're going to go over it in detail. And we also got a fun one this week because we're redoing our how-to salmon fish diagram. This is something we give out in the shop to help folks get ready when they're going out, and I've got a new copy from Eric. Eric, if you guys don't know who he is, he does the really cool Riverwalker stickers, some really funky stuff, some beautiful artwork as well, and he's been doing a bunch of diagrams for us, and we get to edit it today because I want to release it in the next 3 days, but we got to make some tweaks. Eric really knows his game, but he basically gives me a rough draft, and I play around with it. What our lengths are for hoochies, what our lengths are for spoons, that kind of thing. We're going to walk through it and you guys can follow along. But if you're getting ready to get out and go saltwater fishing finally in some of our open waters, you want to stay tuned. Now, for you river guys, I'm not going to neglect you either. It's September 1st/2nd, but it is time to get out scouting. And there is some Chilliwack/Vetter caveats when it comes to some work being done in the lower river we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how that might affect fishing in the long term because it's interesting, but we're also going to talk about how it's going to affect if you're planning to get out scouting. Now, last week, Taylor did a really good report on when to think about going salmon fishing for the Vetter River and sort of that timing. I'm going to walk you through some of those numbers. When we look at it, you know, what those dates are, when to consider going, but now is the time to get ready. We're also going to touch base on the sockeye side of things. One thing has changed, two things haven't. I still need a haircut, and no, we're not going to have a sockeye opening this season. And we're going to touch a little bit on some of the politics. Ironically, I did not do a report last week. Why? Because I was too angry. I was too emotionally invested. Had to take a little bit of a time out. We're going to go over some of the stuff that I'm hearing, and all of it is hearsay. So I'm going to touch a little bit on that at the back end of the report. As always, you want to see more reports like this, consider hitting the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let's get into it. All right, everybody, thanks for tuning in with me this week. September is a big month when it comes to fishing in the lower mainland and a big month for a bunch of our fisheries. I'm going to try to keep it brief, but I got a lot to go over. Before we get there, I've tuned the camera up a little bit because the desk is a complete disaster because I'm going fishing. I'm not going to say where, but I'll give you guys a little hint. You can guess down in the comment section below because I'm going to be using this thing. Yep, that is huge. And I might bring a few of these guys along. That one's a fun one for you. Kind of a random assortment of fishing stuff that's sitting on the desk right now. But that aside, let's talk about what's happening with the September 1 opening and where that comes in. Now, we got good weather for this weekend. I'm going to pull that up really quick if you guys are headed out there because I'm sure you guys are interested. So here we go. And it is looking like sun right across the board and reasonably good winds. We've got maybe some wind on Saturday that you're going to have to take into consideration. Links in the description. Always check your winds before you go out. Tides are definitely worth looking at as well. We've got a low tide as we roll into the Friday at 4 in the morning, and then it peaks at a high at 11:37. So that's cool. That's going to be incoming tide all morning. I do recommend getting early for this one. Staging fish tend to bite early, but then they also are going to focus on those slack tides. So an incoming high slack tide, I'd like to see it at 9. That'd be perfect tides, but let's call 11 pretty good. That's going to roll throughout the week as you guys are fishing, pushing into the midday. So you definitely want to be fishing the midday, but you're going to get some low slacks really early in the morning, and that'll be really cool too. As we push into sort of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they'll be at least reachable for most folks who don't want to get up at dark 30. So decent tides, definitely well worth looking at. Check those winds, make sure they're sussing out. Now, reports from down at the mouth of Fraser. And just, I'm going to throw the map up just so you guys all know where we're talking about, because there's some important caveats there of where you can fish and where you can't. But overall, guys are going to be fishing this area, and they fish it relatively shallow compared to some of the other fisheries that we've been doing all summer that have been open, as well as your winter fisheries that have been open for the last couple of years. I like rolling 33, 47, 67. Let's throw out some unlucky or lucky numbers for you guys. But those are sort of the spreads that I put, and I do recommend stacking if you're good enough to do it right now, because bites can come up any zone. And why does that happen? Well, the mouth of the Fraser is a relatively dirty water. Light doesn't penetrate down. So those fish can run shallow, especially with the fresh water coming in, where they're coming up into the shallow waters to shoot up the river. So have a full spread. A lot of guys do love running chrome style stuff on their shallow rods, but glow stuff deep. I go full send glow, but lots of folks do well out there on those chrome one shallow, glow stuff deep. I'll throw some pictures up here of teaser heads that we love. Bait is also a key when it comes to this fishery. When things are on, and just so you guys know, the reports leading up to opening day have been excellent. When things are on, it doesn't always matter what you're throwing down there. But these fish are mature fish, and when there's picky fish and things are getting pressured, which it will be, there will be a lot of boats out there to enjoy this fishery, bait is critical. So rolling your anchovies, rolling your herring. Now, it's quite funny in the local area, everyone comes in asking for anchovies, not herring. And our joke in the shop is that the only time a Chinook locally sees a anchovy, he shortly later gets bonked on the head because he's bitten a bait. There's very few anchovies in our local water. There are some exceptions there, but running medium to small herring and medium to large-ish anchovies is what you want to run. And bait has been an issue the last couple of years just because of this shift in the cycles of fisheries. And so we have both in the shop right now. I do recommend loading up. We're not sure how that supply is going to hold up, but we've got it now, so make it count. Okay, let's take a peek at our Downrigger chart, because this is a fun one, and this is going to help you guys with this fishery. And for you river fishermen, stay tuned. We're going to get into that in a second. Now, Eric put this together for me. This is a rough draft. Eric's going to be mortified that I'm showing this all to you, but we have handouts when it comes to the shop. If you come in, we're going to walk you through it, and we're going to tailor make it. They're all basic stuff, so bear with it on a 50-foot level. But we're going to take a peek at this, and this is how you guys are going to be running down at the mouth of the Fraser. You're going to be stacking if you can. If you can't, don't force yourself, but try to learn to stack. This is one of the fisheries that really benefits from having a bunch of different depths covered, just because of how light penetrates and how dirty the water is. Now, so here we got it, and so how do I do it? Well, I'm going to throw the flasher off the back of the boat, and I usually peel out like 25 feet. Now, I look at the length of the boat, so I like peel it off the length of the boat. We're in sort of 28-foot, 30-foot Grady's. That's sort of a rough number. And then I pull the rod back, and I grab on to snap in my release clip. That rod's about 10 and a half feet. By the time I pull it back, let's call it minus 10. So most of the time, I'm running like a 15 to 18 feet from my clip to my flasher. Some guys like running much longer, and there is times when running longer into that sort of double that up to 30 feet. So my rule is go 15 to 30 feet off your clip to your flasher. Now, one caveat if you guys and girls are stacking the rods is if you're running braid, you have to have bumpers or you're going to slide stuff all over the place. If you're running wire, we still recommend bumpers, and I want you guys to put your bumper about 80 inches above where you plan to put a flasher. Now the pro trip is put 2 of those bumpers. They always fly off. They fly off when you're not paying attention, and you're going to hit the up switch because you got a fish on one side, and you're going to throw the whole shooting match into the rigger, losing your release clip. God only knows what else. So 2 bumpers 80 inches above, and then put 1 down on the bottom where you plan to put your rod. Just gives you an idea. Now, I usually put my clip below this. Why? Because when I'm sending things down, I don't want things to slide. Now, when it comes to braid, things slide all over the place. You got to put 2 bumpers, 1 on each side, clip it in the middle so they don't go all over the place. Still putting one 80 inches above to make sure they don't go flying into the downrigger. But when it comes to running wire, I still like the clip just below that, because when we're sending it down is the chance that it may get a little bit of a slide on it because that force going down. And when I'm bringing stuff up, if it slides a little bit, it's not the end of the world because I'm usually checking it at that point. And so that's how we're going to drop that down. Now, This also has our basic setup, and there's a couple cheats we use when we're guiding because we know that people on our boats may have never handled a salmon rod before. So we always put a huge salmon bead at the top of our flasher. Now we sometimes even put a buzz bomb bumper in there, you know, those little black rubber things. Again, just giving us a little more cushion for when Uncle John, who's never handled a salmon rod but says he's a pro fisherman, jumps on board and tries to reel that 12-pound fish past the tip of the rod. This is going to give you some wiggle room. Now, the next thing is 6-ball bead chains. Use these. I see so many folks who are new to salmon fishing just putting a single ball bearing out there, or a, God forbid, one of the old school crusty things they found in the bottom of their tackle box. When you run over algae, a jellyfish, or multiple things out there, that'll clog that guy up. And literally within 20 minutes, if you get clogged up stuff at this point in your system, you're going to have twisted line, and twisted line is going to lead to massive tangles. So 6-ball bead chain. Then we run a dual lock. Some guys use McMahon's. I don't personally like them. Maybe my fingers are a little bit wimpy. I'm sorry, but I like to use a dual lock. It's a little easier for me to clip in and out. Plus, it doesn't always slide off. So I do a dual lock there. Then we run down and we've got our flasher, and usually most flashers have another dual lock off the back end, and then we do one more 6-ball bead chain, just hoping to have redundancy for that crap of algae that you run over that major slick of jellyfish. And then we run our bait. Now, what are we running? Right now, it's teaser heads and bait. Run teaser heads and bait to start off the day. If you're so blessed that there's a bunch of fish out there, you can switch to spoons and hoochies. Spoons and hoochies are very effective, but we do find for these mature fish, you are going to want to run bait. And like I said, 6-inch, 5.5-inch, that kind of length is usually standard. Sometimes I like some big ones in the bin, and I do love making some glow stuff just for fun. I can't correlate if it works, but it keeps my ADD in check when I can play around with different baits and different colors. Come down, we'll show you how to brine up some bait. It's a cool process. Lengths of leader. This is where it's critical if you guys and girls are running hoochies versus bait. Remember, if your lure doesn't make its own action, so it doesn't have a teaser head to spin, it doesn't have a spoon to wobble, it's just something out there, you need it close enough to the flasher that you're going to get it to kick. And that usual length is sort of in that 26 to 31 inch range, and you're going to need to test it. We don't want it going all over the place, but we do want it throwing a little bit of a kick from the whip of that flasher. So keep that in mind. On anything that has its own action, we're running about 6 feet. So I'm about 6 feet tall. I throw a breast span out, plus or minus. I'm in the game. 25-pound, 30-pound Maxima is perfect for that. If you want to go hardcore, fluorocarbon is not an awful idea, but it's hard to correlate a big difference in bites when it comes to fluorocarbon. But if I were in a tournament, I'd definitely be running fluorocarbon to get every percentage of added bite out there. Okay, so that's sort of the gist. That's what we're going to guys put into this rigger diagram. If you guys got some ideas, maybe I missed something, maybe on bumpers. Oh, spread. How far do you spread them across? We do it 20 feet. So 20 feet, I've got like a 15 to 25 foot spread out the back. So I stack my rods 20 feet apart, and that way when I'm going up and I'm going down, they aren't going to cross over too bad. I do know folks that go tighter and tighten up when they find a bite that is working, a depth that is working. But 20 is a good one to start with. And again, spacing your bumpers and your snubber style system at the bottom, I'll leave that up to you. There's lots of options there. Come into the shop. We'll talk you guys through how to do it. Okay. That's the nitty gritty. Again, leave comments down below if I missed something for this diagram. This is still a rough in. If you guys want a copy of this, come in the shop. We can look at it and we can tailor make that a little bit to what you're doing, maybe your skill level. Maybe you want to push the envelope, bring things a little bit tighter, bring things a little bit longer depending on what's happening out there. Okay, that's salmon fishing. I'm looking forward to it. I hope all you guys and girls get out there, send in the pictures, release really big fish if you can. That's something we're asking everyone to do, to just keep those genetics, but we can now keep 2, and the rule is over 62 centimeters, you're good to go. One caveat is this killer whale area. They've set up an area where they want us to avoid for protection of killer whales. I have no clue if it's going to make a difference. I have read the papers and still scratch my head on it, but where is it? Because we want you guys to respect that. When you guys are fishing the bellboy plus or minus a few yards is right on the corner of that block. I'm going to throw the map up here. Now there's 2 jetties that come off the north arm. One is the major north arm, and the other one we call the poop jetty because that's where the effluent from all of our sewage goes. If you're off the poop jetty, you're good to go. If you're off that north arm, you're smack dab in the middle of that closed area, and you're going to have to leave. Do not fish there. We also recommend, we're not sure about the speed. There's some speed restrictions, and if you are in the sight of whales, don't go ripping around. They're calling it a 1,000-meter slow zone when you are seeing whales. Now, the wonder of it is, fishermen, when you see whales, usually it is a sightseeing experience until they pass by and flush out all the salmon below you and then move on. But long story short is we want everyone to be respectful out there, and there will be crowds. So all in all, work with all of us. We all want to get out there and fish because we've all had a choke chain on us for the last 6 or 8 months. Okay, let's talk river fishing, because that's one's cool, and that one has some interesting caveats. So the Vetter is going to be a big one. It's one of the first majors to kick off. We really look hard between the 10th and the 15th, so we got a little bit of time yet. I have had friends going out and getting the odd fish here and there when it comes to Jack Chinook. With that, and tied into saltwater, we have to look at the Albion numbers, and it's not good. It's actually a little bit concerning. I'm going to throw some stuff up here, but basically when you track it back, we're at about 300, 400 fish right now, and the norm is sort of between 700 and 1,200 by this time in previous years. If you do track it back sort of into the 17, 16, 15 range, we do see some lower numbers. And so I do feel we had a very good run in the last 2 or 3 years, even though it's ironic the DFO doesn't think we had. I understand it's complicated. I'll give you guys that. But the long story short is right now projections are not good for Chinook. Our hope is they're 10 days behind. How does that tie into saltwater? Well, that's big news for saltwater. If they're 10 days behind, we've always sort of hit the back end of the bell curve when it comes to the reds and then the whites coming next. If this trend is true and the fish are late, I hate that term, but let's call it late, then we could still see a really nice push at the mouth of the Fraser and then a slightly later push up the Vetter when it comes to timing. So let's call it the 10th. Let's maybe push a few days there if you're planning a trip. Maybe look at the 20th sort of range if you're picking your only day this month to go fishing out on the Chilliwack River. That said, it's a real crystal ball scenario right now. And I do say, I have said runs are late many times before, and it can very commonly mean that the bell curve has just gotten smaller and there's less fish coming. We got to cross our fingers that isn't the case from these Albion numbers, and maybe water levels, which I have tracked. Water levels are higher. Sockeye concentrations, a million multiples out there might be affecting these lower numbers. But just want to let you all know Albion numbers are not great as we speak right now. Now, the work that's being done on a Vetter. Right now, as we speak, it started yesterday, they are going to be doing some gravel work on the lower river. This is to basically build up floodplains so that if they have another high water event, the long glides that we're seeing in the lower river, which are like dead straight shots, are going to be able to absorb some of the water into side channels, back channels, and or settling ponds. There's been controversy about these in the past. Now, I will tell you guys one thing. When they did a bunch of it back in my heyday, which was sort of 2000 range, the settling ponds on the Vetter River were phenomenal fly fishing opportunities because you had big tanky pools, and if the river cut through them and gave them a little bit of current, it was game on. So we'll see how that affects the fishing avenue, and we'll also see how that affects the conservation avenue. I'm not fully educated when it comes to the conservation concerns that are associated with pulling tons of gravel out of a river. If you guys got actual science, put in the comments. I don't want ranting and tinfoil hat stuff. Just give me the science. I'd love to read it and get educated on it. Long story short, on that lower river, you are going to see some construction and you might have some access issues. And I want to say it goes to the 10th or the 7th, somewhere in there. Links in the description. There's a bunch of stuff that'll show you where. I'll put the map up here. That is going to happen. Take that into consideration if you're going out scouting. Okay, last but not least, we've got saltwater out of the way. We've got freshwater out of the way. I got to talk about sockeye. Many of you were waiting for a rant last week. I was due to do a report and I had to get my beer cracked. I was ready to do the report and I said, you know what, I just can't do this. I was too angry. And when you get angry and it comes to fisheries management stuff, it's not healthy to make proper decisions or proper comments or proper classifications. So I was pointing fingers everywhere, and that's something that we all do in the fisheries when it comes to whether you're a commercial guy, a recreational guy, or a First Nations guy. We're all pointing fingers in different directions, and it can get fairly nasty. There's a lot going on out there. I don't like what I'm seeing when it comes to how First Nations are managing their fishery, at least the bad apples that I've seen. Seen some cool stuff too out there. I'm going to leave it at that. I think DFO needs to take a hard look and see how they can treat that in a more legal-based scenario where the laws get enforced. I think the laws are great. I think the system actually could work, but those laws need to be enforced as they would be enforced for commercial or recreational anglers. I've also heard scuttlebutt from the commercial guys that there's testing issues and number issues and test sets weren't done correctly, and that there was a lot going on that front. I have no clue. Again, everyone's going to root for their team, and it may not be actually the truth that's out there. The one thing I will say to everybody, that this was a weird one. We thought they were coming. We expected many to come. Many should have come when we look at the science and we look at what should come from nature. There should be an accounting of this, and we can't forget about it. You're going to see over the next 3 or 4 or 5 weeks, the talk will happen. You'll hear scuttlebutt about it, and then it'll trickle away, and it'll be out of everyone's mind / radar. We're going to try to keep updates on what actually happened so we can figure out why so many fish were coming back early and then why such a poor run came through in the back end. But let's just keep it on our radar, because if we want to see this sockeye fishery happen 3 years, 4 years down the road, if we don't take note of what actually happened and then bring those concerns to the people that can make changes, we're going to be in trouble. All right, rant aside. Thank you guys for tuning with me. Thank you guys for staying with there. I hope you guys are getting out saltwater. I hope you guys are getting ready for the salmon season that's coming. I'm going to leave some cool videos on some salmon fishing stuff up here if you guys are thinking about getting out. And as always, you want to see more fishing reports like this, consider hitting the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to catch you in 2 weeks.